The quantum resonance chambers of Research Station Prometheus VII hummed with barely contained energy as Dr. Aliena Vasquez hunched over her workstation, completely absorbed in cataloging the luminescent properties of Zerathian fungi samples. The specimens pulsed with ethereal blue light in patterns that seemed almost too organized to be natural, each pulse corresponding to complex mathematical sequences that Aliena was convinced held the key to understanding biological consciousness at the quantum level. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice the sudden drop in ambient temperature that preceded the arrival of Queen Zephyra of the Zerathian Empire. Nor did she register the way every other scientist in the laboratory suddenly found urgent reasons to examine equipment in distant corners of the room. Aliena remained blissfully unaware of the diplomatic crisis unfolding around her, until a voice like crystalline thunder shook the very foundations of the station. "Enough of this cowardice," Queen Zephyra announced, her psychic aura crackling with barely contained frustration that made the air itself seem to vibrate with menace. "I demand answers, and I will have them now." Aliena looked up from her microscope with the bewildered expression of someone who'd been pulled from deep concentration, blinking owlishly at the scene before her. The laboratory, which moments earlier had buzzed with the productive energy of 24 researchers, now resembled the aftermath of a very polite evacuation. Scientists huddled behind equipment cabinets like they were taking cover from incoming artillery, while Dr. Harrison, the station commander, stood frozen near the main console with the expression of a man who just realized his diplomatic training hadn't covered this particular scenario. Queen Zephyra herself stood in the center of the lab like a force of nature made manifest, her tall form radiating an authority that seemed to bend reality around her. Her elegantly pointed ears swept back from her head like the wings of some mythical creature, and her violet eyes blazed with an intensity that made looking directly at her feel like staring into a solar flare. Behind her, almost hidden in her mother's imposing shadow, stood a figure that Aliena's scientific mind immediately cataloged as possibly the most perfect example of Zerathian genetics she'd ever encountered. Princess Aliena possessed the same ethereal beauty as her mother, but where Queen Zephyra radiated controlled power, the princess seemed to emanate a quiet sadness that was somehow more compelling than any display of strength. Her long ears curved gracefully backward, framing a face that appeared to have been designed by someone who understood the mathematical principles underlying aesthetic perfection. When she moved, it was with fluid grace that suggested complete awareness of her environment combined with profound loneliness. 6 months, Queen Zephyra continued, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in frequencies beyond normal human hearing. 6 months of diplomatic overtures, cultural exchange proposals, and research collaboration requests. And what has been the response from your species? Polite deferrals, scheduling conflicts, and barely concealed terror. Dr. Harrison cleared his throat with the sound of a man trying to swallow his own tongue. Your Majesty, I assure you that any delays in our response have been due to the complex nature of interspecies collaboration protocols. We have the utmost respect for. Silence, Queen Zephyra said, and the word carried such psychic weight that Harrison's mouth snapped shut as if controlled by an external force. I did not travel across 7-star systems to listen to more diplomatic nonsense. I came here for truth. Aliena, still processing the fact that alien royalty had apparently invaded her laboratory while she was examining fungal samples, raised her hand with the tentative gesture of someone who wasn't entirely sure she was awake. Excuse me, but what exactly is the question? I was kind of focused on my work, and I think I missed the beginning of this conversation. The Queen's blazing gaze fixed on Aliena with the intensity of a targeting laser. And for a moment, Aliena wondered if she was about to become the first human to die from concentrated royal attention. Then Princess Aliena stepped forward slightly, and Aliena caught a glimpse of something unexpected in those alien eyes, hope mixed with resignation, as if the princess had long since stopped expecting anything good to come from human contact. "The question, Dr. Vasquez," Queen Zephyra said, somehow knowing Aliena's name without introduction, "is why none of your people will accept my daughter as a research partner. Why every proposal for collaboration is met with excuses and evasions. Why, despite her obvious qualifications and genuine desire for intellectual companionship, your entire species seems determined to avoid any meaningful interaction with her." Aliena blinked several times, her scientific mind struggling to process what sounded like the most bizarre diplomatic crisis in human history. "Wait, you're asking why people won't work with Princess Aliena? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, look at her credentials." The comment hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Queen Zephyra's expression shifted from frustrated anger to dangerous interest, while Princess Aliena's eyes widened with something that might have been surprise. "You are familiar with my daughter's credentials?" the Queen asked, her voice carrying undertones that suggested Aliena's next words would determine whether this conversation ended in mutual understanding or interstellar warfare. "Well, yeah," Aliena said, warming to a topic that actually made sense to her. "She's published 17 papers on quantum consciousness theory, revolutionized our understanding of interdimensional energy matrices, and her work on biological computational systems is basically required reading for anyone serious about xenobiology. Plus, she speaks more human languages than most humans do, and her mathematical proofs on consciousness-matter interaction are so elegant they make me want to cry. Of course, I'm familiar with her work. She's basically the Einstein of xenobiology." The silence that followed was so profound that Aliena could hear the hum of individual quantum processors 3 levels below. Queen Zephyra stared at her with an expression that cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of hope. "Then why," the Queen said slowly, "has every human researcher declined collaboration with her?" Aliena looked around the laboratory, taking in the sight of her colleagues still cowering behind equipment like scientists hiding from their own incompetence. Suddenly, the entire situation clicked into place with the clarity of a perfectly aligned experimental result. "Oh," she said, the single syllable carrying the weight of dawning comprehension. "Oh, that explains everything. They're not reject—" Queen Zephyra's smile contained enough predatory satisfaction to make Aliena wonder if she just volunteered for something significantly more dangerous than collaborative research. The psychic pressure in the laboratory shifted from barely contained violence to intense curiosity, which Aliena supposed was an improvement, though she wasn't entirely sure her nervous system appreciated the distinction. "Dr. Vasquez," the Queen said, her voice now carrying harmonics of genuine interest rather than diplomatic fury, "you appear to be the first human willing to engage with this situation honestly. Therefore, you will help me understand why your species finds my daughter so problematic." Aliena glanced around the laboratory, noting that her colleagues had transitioned from hiding behind equipment to pretending to be deeply engaged in sudden urgent maintenance tasks. Dr. Harrison was examining a perfectly functional atmospheric processor, with the intense concentration of someone who desperately wished he were anywhere else in the known universe. "Well," Aliena began, then paused as Princess Aliena stepped forward with fluid grace that made human movement seem clumsy by comparison. Up close, the princess's beauty was even more overwhelming, not just in the aesthetic sense, but in the way her presence seemed to radiate intelligence like heat from a fusion reactor. "Perhaps," Princess Aliena said, her voice carrying musical tones that made Aliena's scientific equipment seem to hum in harmony, "I should explain the nature of my previous collaboration requests. I fear there may have been cultural misunderstandings." Aliena nodded eagerly, partly because she genuinely wanted to understand the situation, and partly because Princess Aliena's voice had the sort of hypnotic quality that made agreeing seem like the most reasonable response in the universe. I propose joint research into quantum consciousness manifestation in biological systems. The princess continued, her elegant hands moving in gestures that seemed to illustrate complex mathematical concepts. Specifically, the possibility that sufficiently advanced organisms might achieve conscious control over quantum field fluctuations, allowing for direct matter-energy manipulation through focused thought. Aliena felt her jaw drop as the implication sank in. You're talking about biological telekinesis, conscious manipulation of quantum fields through neural activity. That's... She paused, searching for adequate words. That's either the most brilliant theoretical framework I've ever heard, or the kind of discovery that would revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, physics, and biology simultaneously. Indeed, Princess Aliena said, and Aliena could swear she saw relief flicker across those perfect features. I also suggested collaborative studies on bioluminescent organisms that demonstrate apparent quantum entanglement across interstellar distances, possibly indicating that consciousness itself might function as a quantum field that transcends conventional spacetime limitations. Aliena made a sound that was part gasp and part whimper. Quantum-entangled bioluminescence, living organisms that maintain conscious connection across light years. Princess, that research could prove that consciousness is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. Precisely, Princess Aliena said, her ears shifting slightly in what Aliena was beginning to recognize as an expression of pleasure. I had hoped to find human researchers capable of approaching these questions with appropriate intellectual rigor and creative speculation. And instead, Aliena said, understanding dawning with terrible clarity, you got a bunch of scientists who took one look at your proposals and realized they were about as qualified to collaborate with you as a hamster would be to assist with brain surgery. Queen Zephyra's laugh was like the sound of crystalline wind chimes caught in a solar storm. Your analogy, while crude, appears surprisingly accurate, though I confess I am unfamiliar with the research capabilities of hamsters. Pretty limited, Aliena assured her, then turned back to Princess Aliena with the desperate enthusiasm of someone who just discovered that Santa Claus was real and personally delivering presents. But wait, there's more, isn't there? I mean, those are just the collaboration requests I heard about through official channels. You've been working on other projects, haven't you? Princess Aliena's expression brightened with a particular joy, reserved for people who rarely get to discuss their favorite subjects with genuinely interested audiences. I have been developing theoretical frameworks for conscious biotechnology, living computational systems that could process information at quantum speeds while maintaining ethical awareness of their own existence. Imagine computers that are not just intelligent, but genuinely conscious and capable of making moral decisions. Aliena sat down heavily in the nearest chair, which happened to be a laboratory stool that wasn't designed for existential shock. Living computers with consciousness and ethics, you're describing artificial life that's actually alive, not just simulated. That's... She paused, brain struggling to process the implications. That could either save civilization or completely transform what it means to be sentient. The applications are virtually limitless, Princess Aliena continued, clearly warming to her subject. Medical systems that could diagnose and treat conditions while maintaining genuine concern for patient welfare. Environmental restoration projects guided by consciousness that actually cares about ecological balance. Exploration vessels that could make autonomous decisions based not just on logic, but on genuine empathy and ethical consideration. Aliena looked around the laboratory, noting that several of her colleagues had stopped pretending to work and were now listening with expressions of dawning horror and fascination. Dr. Martinez from the quantum physics department was gripping his tablet so tightly his knuckles had gone white, while Dr. Thompson from biochemistry appeared to be having some sort of religious experience. Princess, Aliena said carefully, How many human scientists have you actually explained these projects to? Approximately 47, across various research institutions, Princess Aliena replied. The responses have been uniform in their polite disengagement. Aliena could practically see the scenario playing out. Princess Aliena, with her combination of otherworldly beauty and intellect that operated several standard deviations beyond normal human genius, casually describing research projects that would individually represent the greatest scientific breakthroughs in human history. Meanwhile, the human scientists, faced with someone whose casual afternoon thoughts represented decades of their best work, had responded with the intellectual equivalent of hiding under their desks. Yeah, Aliena said with dawning comprehension. I can see how that would be intimidating. It's like showing up to a community